to lose your small summit window just because you got caught up behind somebody. So you got to pass when you can.
The horrifying legend of Green Boots, Everest's frozen ghost. The horrible story of Green Boots, the famous frozen body on Everest, Mount Everest, the tallest place on Earth, a peak where dreams ascend and sometimes die. At 8,500 meters in the icy clutch of Everest's death zone lies a small rocky cave. Inside it once sat a body, motionless, frostbitten, and unmistakable, thanks to a pair of neon green boots. For nearly 2 decades, this nameless figure was simply called Green Boots, becoming both a grim marker and a whispered warning. But Green Boots had a name, Sewang Paljor, an Indian climber from the Indo-Tibetan Border Police. In May 1996, he joined a team bound for the summit. His mother pleaded with him not to go, sensing something. He went anyway. He believed reaching the top would bring honor to his family. Instead, it brought heartbreak. May 10th, a storm roared across the South Col, blizzards, whiteouts, wind screaming like a banshee across the slopes. The team splintered. Paljor and 2 others became trapped. He took shelter in a small cave in the cliffside, hoping to ride out the storm. But this wasn't a storm. It was Everest's fury unleashed. He had oxygen for a few hours. The blizzard lasted days. Paljor never came out. There, in the thin air, his body froze. Still seated, head bowed, hands wrapped around his knees. Other climbers, crawling past on their way to the summit, had to step over his legs. He became part of the mountain, a silent witness to others chasing glory. For years, his identity was debated. Accusations swirled about abandoned climbers, ignored cries for help, and failed rescues. But the mountain never answered. Only the wind knows what truly happened in that cave. In 2014, out of respect, his body was moved, but the legend remained. Green Boots became more than a man. He became a symbol of ambition, of risk, of Everest's ruthless toll. Climbing this mountain isn't just about strength, it's about judgment, respect, timing, and sometimes luck. Paljor's frozen vigil is a stark reminder. Everest doesn't care who you are. It offers no guarantees, only challenges and silence. And to those who dare climb, he stands eternal. Green Boots pressed into the snow, asking one final question. How far are you willing to go for the top? The Hillary Step, a vertical death trap in the sky. Just 300 vertical feet below the summit. That's where the nightmare revealed itself. Hillary and Tenzing had been climbing for hours, lungs burning, legs barely responding, oxygen tanks slowly draining. The wind up here was no longer just wind, it was a scream, howling between rock spires and snow ridges. Every breath came with effort, and then they saw it. A nearly vertical rock wall. 40 feet high, sheer, unforgiving. Later, it would be named the Hillary Step. But in that moment, it was simply a monstrous obstacle, sitting squarely between them and history. The altitude, a brutal 28,839 feet. The air, thin enough to make every movement feel like pushing through molasses. One wrong step here and it wouldn't be a fall, it would be a free fall down one of 2 sides, each dropping thousands of feet into oblivion. On one side lay the Kangshung face of Nepal, on the other the Tibetan plateau. Neither side offered forgiveness. There were no second chances. This was the moment when courage either broke or pushed through. Tenzing stood below, belaying Hillary as he examined the wall. There were no real handholds. The rock face was clean and smooth. The only possible route, a narrow crack between the rock and a hanging cornice of ice. Unstable, untested, and potentially deadly. But hesitation was a luxury they didn't have. So Hillary wedged himself into the crack, pressing his back to the rock, his boots against the ice. inching upward like a human wedge. Every movement was calculated. Every inch upward came with the risk that the cornice might collapse, taking him with it. Tenzing below watched, rope taut, breath shallow. If Hillary fell, Tenzing would have to hold the full weight of his partner, with only a few pitons and a prayer between them and the void. Time slowed. Minutes felt like hours. Hillary's fingers clawed upward. His knees ached. His breath came in desperate gasps. But then, at last, his hand reached the top. He hauled himself over, heart pounding, legs shaking, and secured the rope. Tenzing followed, carefully, steadily. When they finally stood together at the top of the step, they could see the summit. It was close now, and they'd just conquered what many considered the most dangerous technical obstacle on the mountain. The Hillary Step would go on to become infamous, challenging climbers for over 6 decades, until it was destroyed in the 2015 earthquake. But on that day in 1953, it was the final boss, a 40-foot wall guarding the roof of the world. Oxygen catastrophe, climbing while slowly dying. 3 days before Hillary and Tenzing's summit triumph, 2 other climbers, Tom Bourdillon and Charles Evans, had a shot at the top. Their job? Make a first attempt, open the route, and test a new kind of oxygen system. They started strong, but their equipment, that's where things took a dangerous turn. They were using experimental closed-circuit oxygen systems. These weren't like the simpler open systems Hillary and Tenzing used. Closed circuit was supposed to be more efficient, recycling exhaled air, scrubbing it of carbon dioxide, and returning oxygen. In theory, brilliant. In reality, complicated and fragile. Early into the climb, Evans noticed something was off. His breathing was getting harder. Turns out a valve in his system was damaged. Bourdillon, realizing the risk, took off his gloves. Yes, bare hands in sub-zero temps to try and fix it. While his blood began to freeze, he was fiddling with metal parts, building a makeshift repair that took over an hour. They pressed on. As they climbed toward the south summit, Evans' condition worsened. His breaths came 6 at a time per step. That's 6 gasps just to move 1 foot. Something was very wrong. Then came the chilling realization. The oxygen system wasn't delivering enough oxygen, and worse, it was allowing carbon dioxide to build up. The very air they were breathing was poisoning them. At 28,700 feet, they reached the south summit, the highest point any human had stood on Earth. But they couldn't go any further. Their bodies were shutting down. Bourdillon felt a wave of exhaustion so deep he described it as a near-death sensation. Every cell screamed for oxygen, and none was coming. They turned back. What followed was a nightmare descent. Slipping, stumbling, falling, barely able to coordinate movements, they navigated a vertical graveyard. Had they pushed on, they likely wouldn't have returned at all. It was a failure that saved their lives. And without their attempt clearing the path and identifying the oxygen failures, Hillary and Tenzing's climb might never have happened. They were the unsung heroes of the expedition. While history remembers the summit duo, it was Bourdillon and Evans who helped make the summit even possible. Their brutal climb exposed flaws in equipment that could have doomed the entire team. They mapped key parts of the route, discovered critical ice conditions, and offered valuable insight into oxygen use at extreme altitude. But what they endured was more than physical. It was a psychological battle, the crushing realization that the summit was within reach, yet forever out of grasp. Evans later recalled seeing the summit so close, yet feeling his body giving out like a dying engine. No matter how badly he wanted it, the mountain demanded more than he had left. Bourdillon, meanwhile, was physically strong, but burdened with the responsibility of protecting his partner. They were a team, and turning around wasn't a choice. It was survival. On the way down, the mountain threw more obstacles at them. Wind picked up. The slope grew slick with melting snow. Every step risked a fall. Every breath was a gamble with hypoxia. Bourdillon's hands, frostbitten from the earlier repair, began to stiffen. Evan's oxygen deprivation made it hard to concentrate, let alone navigate the ice fields. But they made it back. When they stumbled into the South Col camp, they weren't greeted with judgment. They were hailed for their grit and for their sacrifice, because they had given Hillary and Tenzing the cleanest shot possible. What they proved is something often overlooked. Courage doesn't always mean standing at the top. Sometimes it means knowing when to turn back. It means accepting limits, even in the face of greatness. And that makes their story not a failure, but a vital piece of mountaineering history. The Khumbu Icefall, nature's most lethal obstacle course. Before any dreams of summits or glory, there's one place every Everest climber must cross first: the Khumbu Icefall. And in 1953, it was pure chaos. The Icefall isn't just dangerous, it's alive. A constantly shifting glacier filled with towering seracs, massive ice towers the size of apartment buildings. Some stand still for hours, others collapse without warning, and in between, hidden crevasses deep enough to swallow an entire team. To move through it is to gamble every step. For the British expedition, this wasn't a one-time crossing. They had to go through the Icefall multiple times, ferrying supplies, building camps, and establishing the route. Each trip was a roll of the dice. At one point near Camp 2, they found themselves climbing over what Hillary described as a crazy pile of ice blocks of all shapes and sizes. The ground groaned beneath them. Deep rumbling echoed like thunder under their boots. It wasn't just disorienting, it was threatening to give way at any moment. Then came the hanging seracs, precarious towers of ice poised like swords over the route. At any time, they could fall and crush anyone below. The fear wasn't abstract. Climbers have died there. Many. Even up to 2016, at least 44 climbers have lost their lives in the Icefall alone. Eventually, crevasses began opening under Camp 2 itself. Tents shifted, ropes snapped. The Sherpas, experienced, intuitive, and courageous, flat out refused to sleep there anymore. That wasn't fear, that was wisdom. The camp was abandoned, but the climb had to continue. There's no way around the Icefall. It's Everest's toll gate. And in 1953, it was uncharted. Every ladder, every step, every placement was new and dangerous. But they pushed through it again and again, knowing one misstep, one unlucky shift of ice, could end everything in an instant. The crevasse fall, Tenzing's split-second life-saving grab. Not all dangers on Everest come at 28,000 feet. Some arrive quietly, at lower altitudes, hidden, waiting. As darkness crept across the glacier, Hillary and Tenzing were navigating the lower Icefall. Still dangerous, still unforgiving. They were trying to reach camp before the last light faded. Ahead of them, a familiar crevasse. They'd crossed it earlier using a large, solid chunk of ice, jammed between the edges, like a frozen stepping stone. Hillary went first, but this time, the ice gave way. It happened instantly. One moment he was leaping across. The next, the chunk of ice cracked, then dropped. Hillary followed straight into the abyss. This was it. But Tenzing reacted faster than thought. He didn't shout. He didn't hesitate. He jammed his ice axe deep into the snow and instinctively wrapped the rope around it, anchoring the line. Hillary's body jerked at the end of the rope. The sound, a sharp twang. The fall was stopped. Dangling in the cold, heart racing, Hillary was now suspended over the void. The ice chunk he'd relied on had shattered at the bottom of the crevasse. If Tenzing had been a second slower, it would have been over. Using his crampons and axe, Hillary chipped his way back up the wall. Step by step, he climbed out of the jaws of death. That moment, simple in seconds, epic in meaning, solidified their bond. It proved trust, it showed instinct, and it revealed exactly why Tenzing Norgay was the perfect man to stand on the summit with Hillary. The summit that nearly killed them. At 11:30 a.m. on May 29, 1953, Edmund Hillary and Tenzing Norgay stood side by side on the roof of the world, 29,035 feet, wind swirling around them, the highest point on Earth. They stayed just 15 minutes, took photographs, buried small offerings, shared a moment of silence. Then they turned back. Because on Everest, getting up is only half the journey. Coming down, that's survival. And yet, they made it. News of the successful summit reached Britain on June 2nd, 1953, the same day as Queen Elizabeth II's coronation. The timing, perfect. The symbolism, unforgettable. But it wasn't just a story of success. It was a saga of fear, failure, rescue, and endurance. The 1953 British Everest expedition proved that humanity could push into the death zone and come back with legends. Though their time at the top was brief, it was etched into history. In that thin air above the clouds, they became symbols of courage. Their achievement wasn't just for themselves. It was for every climber who had perished before them and everyone who would dream of Everest after. The moment was quiet, solemn, almost spiritual. Hillary snapped a photo of Tenzing with his ice axe held high, but never asked for one of himself. Later, Tenzing revealed that Hillary had refused, saying it wasn't about glory, it was about the mountain. Before leaving, they buried a small cross, a chocolate bar, and offerings to the gods, symbols of both faith and gratitude. The descent was far from easy. The wind picked up, the snowfields looked different in the light of midday, and their oxygen supplies were running dangerously low. Every step down required focus, coordination, and the knowledge that even now, after the summit, death could still come with one misstep. Back at Camp 9, exhausted but alive, they were greeted with smiles, cheers, and relief. There was no time for celebrations, only rest. Word spread down the mountain through coded messages and radio relays. When the final confirmation reached London, it sent ripples across the world. In New Zealand, church bells rang. In India and Nepal, flags flew high for Tenzing. And in Britain, amid the coronation of a new queen, a story of triumph arrived like a gift from the gods. This expedition changed everything. It redefined what was possible. Everest was no longer invincible. It was human, but not conquered, because Everest in truth can never be conquered. It allows passage, and only when it chooses. Hillary and Tenzing never claimed to have defeated the mountain. They simply endured it, respected it, and returned. Their success wasn't fueled by ego, but partnership. Two men, one from the farms of New Zealand, the other from the slopes of the Himalayas, united by trust, discipline, and grit. Theirs was not just a summit, it was a lesson that the limits of the human body can be pushed when the heart is strong, that the death zone is survivable when the soul refuses to quit, that no obstacle, no matter how high, is beyond reach if climbed together. And that's what makes this story eternal. Not just that they reached the summit, but how they did it. With humility, with each other, and with the mountain's silent permission. The first successful Everest climb wasn't just a mountaineering achievement, it was a human epic. Frozen boots, broken oxygen systems, sheer cliffs, living glaciers, and deadly crevasses. These weren't ever made it back down alive. Welcome to K2's South Face, the setting for the legendary yet perilous Polish line. Imagine a climb where every step could be your last, where avalanches and ice falls constantly threaten, and the margin for error is non-existent. Back in the summer of 1986, two of Poland's finest climbers, Jerzy Kukuczka and Tadeusz Piotrowski, was no stranger to danger. But in 1986, he set his sights on something even seasoned climbers called suicidal. Alongside fellow Polish climber Jerzy Kukuczka, Piotrowski aimed to forge a brand new route up K2, the southwest pillar, later known as the Polish line. No one had ever climbed it, and for good reason. Even legendary mountaineer Reinhold Messner had dismissed it as far too dangerous. So why take the risk? This wasn't just about summiting the world's second highest peak. For Piotrowski and Kukuczka, it was about redefining the possible. Their route would cut straight up K2's exposed face, through unstable rock, avalanche-prone snowfields, and brutal weather. Every step would be a fight not just against gravity, but against the mountain's brutal legacy. K2 had already claimed dozens of lives, and this route was considered among the deadliest. Their journey began as part of a larger international expedition organized by Dr. Karl Herrlichhofer from Munich. Base camps were set for both Broad Peak and K2, while many climbers focused on established routes. Kukuczka and Piotrowski chose the path no one else dared touch. It was an act of bold defiance, both of the mountain and of the limits climbers had accepted for years. What followed was a climb filled with suffering, triumph, and tragedy. Their story would go on to define one of the most infamous climbs in mountaineering history, a bold push-up a vertical graveyard that very few would ever dare repeat. What exactly makes the Polish line on K2 so brutally difficult? A route so feared it remains unclimbed since its first daring ascent in 1986. Unlike the more popular and somewhat less daunting Abruzzi Spur, which many climbers attempt, the Polish line slices straight through the steepest and most unforgiving sections of K2's wildly complex south face. This is not just a climb, it's a gauntlet against some of the harshest natural challenges imaginable. One of the biggest threats on this route comes from the enormous seracs, massive blocks of unstable ice that hang ominously overhead, threatening to collapse without warning. These towering ice formations can crash down with little notice, triggering avalanches and deadly ice falls that can wipe out entire lines of climbers in seconds. Beneath these seracs lie snowfields that are often unstable and prone to sudden slides, creating a constant nerve-wracking avalanche risk that tests every ounce of a climber's vigilance and nerve. Beyond the environmental dangers, the Polish line presents intense technical climbing challenges. The route demands mastery over mixed terrain, where climbers must switch seamlessly between rock and ice, often on vertical or near vertical surfaces. Each movement requires precision and expertise, using ice axes, crampons, and sheer strength. But here, unlike on more frequented paths, there are no fixed ropes to aid the ascent. Climbers carry the entire burden of safety and progress on their own. Adding to the ordeal is the complete absence of supplemental oxygen, ascending into what mountaineers call the death zone, the altitudes above 8,000 meters where oxygen levels drop dramatically, pushes the human body to its absolute limit. With every breath harder to take and every muscle weaker, risk and exhaustion mount dangerously. Harsh, unpredictable weather can arrive without warning, bringing storms that freeze or blind climbers, and the terrain itself is relentlessly treacherous, riddled with hidden crevasses and steep drops. When Jerzy Kukuczka and Tadeusz Piotrowski took on this route, their ascent became a testament to indomitable willpower. Step by grueling step, They battled the mountain's ruthless demands, climbing higher into the thin, freezing air where human strength and spirit are tested beyond measure. Their journey stands as a harrowing example of human endurance, skill, and determination, confronting not just a mountain, but the very limits of possibility. Climbing K2 is a legendary achievement, but what many people don't realize is that summiting this peak is only half the struggle. The descent can be even more perilous. For Jerzy Kukuczka and Tadeusz Piotrowski, the victory at K2's summit was immediately followed by unimaginable hardship. Exhausted after their harrowing ascent of the Polish line, a route considered even by elite climbers to be suicidal, they began their descent via the now infamous Abruzzi Spur. Mentally and physically drained, they faced yet another deadly challenge. As they carefully picked their way down, disaster struck. Piotrowski lost both his crampons. On such steep, icy terrain, that's akin to losing your lifeline. Without those steel spikes to grip the mountain, every step becomes an agonizing gamble. Imagine standing on a glassy ice slope over 8,000 meters above sea level with nothing but the abyss yawning below you. For Piotrowski, this terrifying reality left him defenseless against the mountain. Tragically, with no way to secure himself, he slipped and plummeted down the face, never to be seen again. It was a heartbreaking end to one of mountaineering's most audacious undertakings, a vivid reminder that on K2, even tiny mistakes can be fatal. Why, though, has no climber repeated their feat or chosen to risk the Polish line since? The reasons are as chilling as the mountain itself. The Polish line is infamous for its relentless avalanche danger and frequent ice falls. Massive seracs loom overhead, waiting to collapse without warning. Steep, unstable snowfields test a climber's nerves and judgment at every turn. And unlike more established K2 routes, this path offers no fixed ropes or safety margins. Every handhold, every step demands absolute focus and skill. There's zero room for error. Even with today's advanced gear and weather forecasting, nothing can fully mitigate the sheer unpredictability and danger posed by this line. The mountains doesn't just challenge your strength, it challenges your luck, your resolve, and the very limits of survival. The story of Kukuczka and Piotrowski's ascent and the tragic descent that followed continues to haunt the climbing world. The Polish line stands as a monument not only to their courage, but also to the razor-thin line between glory and disaster on K2. No one has dared follow in their footsteps, and perhaps given what's at stake, no one ever will. What lessons do we take from the extraordinary climb of Jerzy Kukuczka and Tadeusz Piotrowski on K2's Polish line? Their story goes far beyond a mountain ascent. It's a profound example of what it means to push human limits and redefine what's possible in the face of overwhelming odds. When you look closely at their journey, you see not just physical strength or technical skill, but a deep well of courage, determination, and unyielding resolve. At its core, their climb teaches us about the spirit of exploration, the relentless drive to break new ground, even when that ground is steeped in danger and uncertainty. The Polish line had long been dismissed as suicidal, a route named for its sheer hazards: unstable snowfields, looming seracs, avalanche-prone slopes, and unforgiving technical challenges. Yet Kukuczka and Piotrowski dared to take it on, knowing that success meant venturing where almost no one had dared before. But with this boldness came a sobering reminder: the immense, indifferent power of nature. High-altitude mountaineering is a constant negotiation with forces far beyond human control. No matter how skilled or prepared you are, a shifting ice block, a sudden storm, or a misstep can bring disaster in an instant. Their tragic descent, with Piotrowski's fatal fall, underscores the precariousness of balancing ambition with respect for these merciless conditions. Did those climbers have moments of doubt? Almost certainly. Imagine standing on that cliff face, the route below possibly ready to collapse at any second. The mental and emotional strain must have been enormous, knowing each choice carried life or death consequences. How do you manage fear when the margin for error vanishes? What thoughts run through your mind as you push upward in the thin, freezing air, and the mountain seems ready to swallow you whole? These questions linger in mountaineering lore because they spotlight the human side of these epic adventures. The Polish line isn't just a path etched into K2's face. It has become a symbol of extreme human courage, of ambition meeting raw, unforgiving reality. It embodies the paradox of mountaineering, the desire to conquer and the necessity to survive. This route reminds us that the pursuit of greatness always carries risk, and sometimes the costs are heartbreakingly high. Perhaps the greatest. Can the Polish line be repeated without tragedy? With drone reconnaissance, better forecasting, and lighter gear, maybe. But will anyone ever climb it and return alive? That's the mystery. For now, the route remains untouched. Not because it's unclimbable, but because it's a reminder of human limits. Mountains don't care about your ambition. They don't care if you're strong, skilled, or famous. They offer no. Your rope, your gear, the only thing standing between you and a fatal plunge down hundreds of feet of vertical rock. And sometimes they fail when you need them most. Welcome to the terrifying world of rope snaps and gear failures caught on camera, where even the most experienced climbers learn that gravity is unforgiving and equipment failure can happen to anyone. What makes these incidents so chilling isn't just the falls themselves. It's the fact that climbers did everything right, checked their gear, followed safety protocols, and still found themselves hurtling toward the ground when the unthinkable happened. Today, we're diving into real incidents where ropes snapped, carabiners broke, and harnesses failed, turning routine climbs into life-or-death situations in the blink of an eye. The murder wall claims its victim. Let's start with one of the most notorious faces on Earth, the Eiger's North Face in Switzerland, infamously known as the Murder Wall. Since 1935, this nearly 6,000-foot vertical giant of rock and ice has claimed over 64 lives, and on March 22, 1966, it added another name to that grim list, John Harland. John was no amateur. The 30-year-old American alpinist and U.S. Air Force pilot had already made history as the first American to ascend the Heckmare route on the Eiger's North Face. But John wasn't satisfied with repeating what had been done before. He wanted to carve a new, more direct route up the murder wall. After more than a month of brutal struggle alongside climbers Leighton Core, Dougal Haston, and Chris Bonington, John was ascending alone to rejoin his group about 2,000 feet from the summit. Then it happened. A fixed rope that had been anchored to the rock face suddenly broke while John was on it. He fell 4,000 feet to the base of the Eiger. Think about that for a moment. 4,000 feet. The fall would have taken over 20 seconds, an eternity of knowing exactly what was about to happen. John didn't survive, but 3 days later, his fellow climbers reached the summit and named the route the John Harland Route in his honor. But here's the question that haunts every climber. If a fixed rope on one of the most famous climbs in the world can fail, what does that say about the gear we trust with our lives? When a free soloist's rope fails. Now, here's where things get truly ironic. Dan Osman was legendary for climbing without ropes. fearlessly free-soloing routes that would make most climbers' palms sweat just watching. He gained massive fame with his 4-minute, 25-second speed solo of Bear's Reach, a climb that featured an iconic double dino leap over a gap between holds that became one of the most recognized moves in climbing history. But Dan also pioneered something called rope jumping, essentially controlled free-fall jumps from cliffs caught by safety ropes. His record was over 1,000 feet. On November 23, 1998, Dan returned to the Leaning Tower in Yosemite National Park, a 2,500-foot rock formation, to dismantle his rope jump setup. But before taking it down, he decided to make one more jump. Mid-fall, the main rope snapped and Dan plummeted to his death. The irony was devastating. A climber who had defeated death countless times without any rope died because a rope failed him. The investigation by Black Diamond Equipment's quality assurance manager revealed the chilling cause. Dan's jump rope was made of several ropes tied together, and a change in the jump angle caused the main rope to cross and catch on itself at a knot during his fall. The friction caused the rope to cut itself by melting. The ropes had been exposed to rain and snow for over a month, leading many to believe weather damage caused the failure. But the investigation found no evidence that weather, UV exposure, or previous falls contributed to the rope failure. It was purely the rope crossing itself, a freak accident that cost one of climbing's most fearless pioneers his life. The man who seemed immune to gravity's pull was ultimately claimed by it because of a rope configuration gone wrong. Caught on camera, the sharp edge slice. Some gear failures happen in front of witnesses, captured forever on camera as a warning to others. Italian climber Mel Sinati was tackling the Elder Statesman route in Kimber, England, a climb he'd done before. The route was notorious for having a particularly scary arête, which is a sharp edge of rock. These edges are beautiful to look at, but deadly to climbing ropes. As Mel moved through the crux of the climb, the hardest part, he lost his grip and began falling. Initially, this wasn't cause for panic. He had a rope. He'd placed protection. He should have been fine. But as the rope ran along that sharp arête during his fall, it did something terrifying. It literally sliced through his rope. The video captured it all. Mel fell 10 meters, about 33 feet, to the ground. By some miracle, he only walked away with a broken wrist and heel. 10 meters might not sound like much compared to some falls on this list, but it's well within the range where falls frequently prove fatal. Mel's survival was luck, pure and simple, but his accident highlighted a critical vulnerability in the climbing protection system. Sharp rock edges can cut through modern climbing ropes like a knife through butter when loaded with the force of a falling climber. Sharp edges cutting ropes is actually more common than most climbers realize. In fact, between 2008 and 2012, there were at least 3 documented accidents where ropes were severed by worn, fixed quick draws on sharp edges. One occurred at a climbing gym in Prague, another at Red River Gorge in the US, and a fatal accident at the Maglech Crag in Switzerland. The issue isn't just natural rock. Worn carabiners on fixed quick draws develop sharp edges over time that can damage rope sheaths and even sever ropes completely during falls. Joshua Tree's deadly secret. Fast forward to April 18, 2011, at Joshua Tree National Park near Los Angeles. David Pinagar, a 33-year-old rock climber from California, was having what should have been a routine climbing day. David was described as an excellent rock climber with years of experience, always seeking adventure wherever he went. He and his friend were climbing a route called a Walk on the Wild Side. located along a spiny ridge with a 600-foot vertical face. David's partner had just rappelled to the ground safely. David was still making his way down when his rope suddenly snapped. He fell 150 feet to the ground, dying on impact. It was the first climbing death in the park since 2009. The investigation into what caused David's rope to fail on a standard rappel sent shockwaves through the climbing community. Here was an experienced climber on a routine descent, and his lifeline simply gave out. The incident underscored a harsh reality. Rope failure can strike even on the descent, when climbers are tired and perhaps less vigilant about gear condition. The legend brought down by a worn loop. If David Pingar's accident was shocking, what happened to Todd Skinner was absolutely devastating to the climbing world. Todd wasn't just any climber. He was a 47-year-old world-renowned legend. In 1988, Todd and his partner Paul Piana achieved what the climbing community thought impossible. They free-climbed the Salathi Wall on El Capitan in Yosemite. It was one of the first ever big wall climbs at 5.13B grade and led to the birth of modern free climbing in Yosemite. Todd had logged over 300 first ascents across 26 countries and was known throughout the community for his meticulous safety measures. In October 2006, Todd had spent 2 weeks with his climbing partner Jim Hewitt in Yosemite Valley, practicing for the free ascent of a route on the Leaning Tower. Yes, the same formation where Dan Osman died. On October 23rd, Todd stood on the Leaning Tower, exhausted from climbing all day. He and Jim had just discussed their plans for the next day before Todd began rappelling down from a ledge midway up the 2,000-foot face. Then the unthinkable happened. His nylon belay loop, a crucial part of his harness that connects the leg loops to the waist belt, broke. Todd plummeted over 500 feet to his death. What made this even more tragic was that Jim Hewitt, Todd's friend, had previously observed that the harness appeared worn. In an NPR interview, Paul Piana, Todd's longtime climbing partner, who had shared that historic El Capitan ascent with him, said it plainly. It was equipment failure, but I have to say it was also Todd's failure in continuing to use it. Here was a man known for safety consciousness, a climber who had survived hundreds of first ascents in extreme conditions around the world, brought down by a worn piece of webbing he should have replaced. Todd's death sent a clear message. Complacency kills, even among the best. The unwitnessed fall down under. Not all gear failures have the mercy of quick deaths. In June 2011, 34-year-old rock climber Clint Westbrook headed out for a climbing trip at Mugara Peaks National Park in Australia. Clint lived life to the fullest, and climbing was one of his favorite activities. He told friends he'd be back by the weekend after his Thursday departure. When Clint didn't return, his family became concerned, but friends assured them this was typical behavior. Clint often extended his trips. It wasn't until the following Tuesday, when he still hadn't shown up, that a full-scale search was launched. Clint's van was found in a parking lot, and soon after, searchers discovered his body at the bottom of the northwest cliff of Mount Greville. The investigation revealed that while Clint was likely attempting to install anchor points for his rope, while rappelling down the cliff face, his rope broke, sending him falling 30 meters, about 98 feet, to the base of the cliff. He died doing what he loved. But the tragedy is that he lay there for days before anyone found him. His family and friends mourned not just the loss, but the agonizing days of uncertainty before they knew his fate. The hidden killers, understanding gear failure. So what's actually causing these ropes to snap and gear to fail? The answer isn't simple, but understanding it could save your life. Research into climbing accidents over 30 years reveals some sobering statistics. In traditional climbing, nearly half of all accidents involved gear failure. That's not a typo, half. Rope failures specifically come from several sources. Sharp edges, as we saw with Mel Sinati, can slice through ropes when loaded during a fall. But there's also the issue of worn carabiners. When aluminum carabiners are left as fixed gear on routes, particularly on the first bolt where climbers lower off repeatedly, they develop sharp grooves from the rope running over them thousands of times. Sand-laden ropes act like an abrasive cutting tool, wearing down lightweight aluminum in a relatively short period. Between 2010 and 2012 alone, 3 climbers had their ropes severed by worn fixed quick draws, resulting in ground falls and severe injuries. Then there's the phenomenon called nose hooking. This happens when the nose of a carabiner, the part where the gut rests when closed, gets caught on a bolt hanger. This prevents the carabiner from rotating and puts it in an extremely weak orientation. Black Diamond Equipment tested this scenario and found that nose-hooked carabiners can break at less than 2 kilonewtons. That's less than 10% of their rated strength. To put that in perspective, even the smallest climbing falls generate forces well above 2 kilopascals. A nose-hooked carabiner can fail from a load that feels like nothing more than a bounce test. Harness failures like Todd Skinner's often come from prolonged UV exposure and wear that degrades nylon webbing. The belay loop on a harness takes tremendous force during falls and rappels, and when it's compromised, there's no backup. If it fails, you fall. And let's not forget rope contamination. In one bizarre accident at a climbing gym, a climber fell and his rope broke during what should have been a low-load fall. Investigation revealed traces of sulfuric acid on the section of rope where failure occurred, local contamination that created a weak point that failed under load. The lesson: where you store your rope and what it comes in contact with matters. Learning from tragedy, these stories aren't meant to scare you away from climbing. They're meant to make you smarter about it. Every one of these accidents teaches something critical. Check your fixed gear before trusting it. Retire your worn harnesses and ropes before they retire you. Understand that sharp edges and worn carabiners are rope killers. Place adequate protection. In trad climbing, gear failure is involved in nearly half of all accidents. Statistics show that climbing fatalities occur at a rate of 0.13 per 1,000 climbing hours. That might sound low until you consider how many hours climbers log. The Czech Mountaineering Association reports an average of 3.43 fatal injuries per year among 18,000 members. These aren't just numbers. They're John Harlan's, Dan Osmond's, Todd Skinner's, and countless others who thought it wouldn't happen to them. The final word. Rock climbing pushes us to our limits, testing strength, skill, and courage against the raw face of nature. But nature doesn't care about your experience level, your confidence, or how many first ascents you've logged. When gear fails, gravity wins. The climbers we've discussed today, from John Harland on the murder wall to Todd Skinner on the Leaning Tower, were among the best. Their deaths weren't caused by recklessness or inexperience. They were caused by equipment failure, worn gear, and the unpredictable variables that exist whenever humans venture into vertical terrain. Always prioritize safety. Regularly inspect your gear with a critical eye. Never underestimate the risks. Replace worn equipment before it fails. Double-check fixed gear before trusting your life to it. And remember, the rope that catches you today might be the one that breaks tomorrow if you don't respect its limits. These climbers died doing what they loved, and in their tragedies, they've left us lessons written in the harshest terms possible. Honor their memory by learning from their experiences, by being more vigilant, more cautious, and more respectful of the unforgiving nature of climbing. Because in the high-stakes world where they want all of them, every single one of the 14 towering giants that stretch above 8,000 meters. That's what made 2023 so electrifying and so tragic. It became the stage for a race that had never been won by any American woman before. The race to conquer all 14 8,000ers. Two names suddenly became the center of this whirlwind: Gina Marie Rizzuchidlo and Anna Gutu. On the surface, they had the same dream, but what unfolded on the snow-laced ridges of Shishapangma revealed just how different their paths truly were, and how, in the death zone, competition can become catastrophe. It was October, and only 80 meters remained between the summit and Gina. That's barely the length of a soccer field. For mountaineers, 80 meters sounds like victory, but on Shishapangma, nothing is guaranteed, especially not at 8,000 meters, where oxygen is thin, judgment is blurred, and every step could be the last. Just below, Anna Gutu and her Sherpa Migmar were racing too, not just against the cold or the slope, but against Gina. There was no handshake, no coordinated ascent. This wasn't about camaraderie, it was about who would make it first. The stakes? Immortality. The title of the first American woman to summit all 14 of the world's highest peaks. But as their boots dug into the snow, only one thing was certain: neither would come back alive. This wasn't just another climb. This was the deadliest competition on Earth. Backtrack just a little. Gina and Anna weren't strangers to altitude, but their backgrounds couldn't have been more different. Gina, 45, from Massachusetts, was the seasoned alpinist. Her journey had been years in the making. Everest in 2018, K2 in 2022, and a string of other brutal peaks along the way. There was grit in her story, an unrelenting climb through experience and hardship. Those who knew her said she lit up rooms with her laugh. But when she strapped on crampons, there was fire behind her focus. There was something magnetic about her presence on a mountain. She didn't climb for the cameras or the crowd. She climbed because the peaks called her. Friends recalled how she'd spend hours studying topographical maps, memorizing every route as if she was preparing for war. Her rhythm was slow and methodical, yet somehow always ahead of schedule. In base camps, she'd often be seen helping others adjust their gear or offering advice over warm tea. There was leadership in her style, not loud, not boastful, but respected. She believed in earning every summit. No shortcuts, no hand-holding, just boots, breath, and sheer will. When she spoke about climbing, her voice would shift, softer, reverent. She saw mountains not just as goals, but as sacred spaces, places that humbled even the strongest. And she wasn't just physically prepared, she was mentally fortified. Journaling after every climb, noting lessons, weather patterns, and emotional highs and lows. Her journey wasn't just about herself either. She mentored young climbers, especially women, encouraging them to step beyond fear. Many who trained with her said she made them feel like anything was possible. Even when she was facing brutal conditions on previous expeditions, she always found moments to send updates home, a quick message, or a snapshot that reminded people how alive she felt out there. Yet despite the kindness and calm she radiated, make no mistake, Gina was fiercely competitive. That fire didn't always burn in public, but it roared inside her. The closer she got to the record, the more focused she became. Those around her noticed the shift in her eyes, the silence during mealtimes, the increased training hours. She wasn't about to let her years of effort slip away. Even off the mountain, she kept a disciplined routine: early morning cardio, altitude mask training, strength conditioning, meditation. Her life revolved around one thing: the 8,000ers. Each summit she bagged was a piece of a much bigger puzzle. It wasn't fame she wanted, it was legacy. She wanted to carve her name into mountaineering history, one peak at a time. And now, standing at the foot of her final summit, all of it, the sacrifice, the pain, the discipline, was culminating. But she wasn't alone on the mountain anymore. Anna was there too, fast on her heels, and Gina knew exactly what that meant. Anna, on the other hand, was newer to this level of mountaineering. 31 years old and ambitious beyond measure, she didn't have Himalayan experience, not until 2023. But what she lacked in time on snow, she made up for in intensity and the company she kept. Her team was no joke. She partnered with elite exped, led by some of the most legendary names in the game, including Nimsdai Purja, Migma David Sherpa, and Migma Tenzi. These were the same climbers who made history on K2 in winter. With their guidance, Anna was aiming to leapfrog experience through pure support, skill, and speed. The rivalry didn't start on Shishapangma. It actually began weeks earlier on Cho Oyu, another 8,000-meter beast. Gina summited first on October 1st. Anna followed on October 2nd, sharing the moment on Instagram, full of energy and celebration. That post would light the first fuse. Up until then, it had been competitive, sure, but now it felt like a chase. There was no direct confrontation, no exchange of heated words, just subtle jabs and quiet tension. Anna's post wasn't malicious, but the timing and tone hit a nerve. Some climbers even noticed a shift in Gina's demeanor after that. What had started as mutual respect between two determined climbers began to morph into something more pointed. Friends close to Gina said she began questioning Anna's rapid progress, wondering how someone so new to Himalayan climbing could keep such a blistering pace. After Cho Oyu, everything moved fast. Gina left right away, already thinking ahead. Anna's team was delayed, some say because of yak issues. Others whisper it may have been sabotage. Nothing was ever proven, but there were murmurs. Whispers that maybe, just maybe, someone had nudged authorities to stall Anna's team just long enough to give Gina a head start. Even if untrue, the mountain community was already split. Anna had to make a brutal choice. Her team left gear behind just to get to Shishapangma on time. They raced with bare essentials, stripped down to what was absolutely necessary for survival. It was a desperate move, but they were determined not to fall behind. Meanwhile, Gina was making her own changes. Dissatisfied with her existing support, she brought on Tenzing Sherpa, a legend in his own right. He'd helped guide another record-breaking climber, Kristen Harela, up all 8,000ers in just over 3 months. He was the kind of Sherpa that could shift an entire expedition's momentum. Both women reached Shishapangma within days of each other. The mountain, ironically, is considered one of the easier 8,000ers, if such a term even exists for death zone peaks. You can actually drive to base camp. From there, it's a slog up a series of steep slopes. Camp 1 at 6,400 meters, Camp 2 a little higher, and Camp 3 near 7,100 meters. After that, it's all summit push, no room for error. And here's where the real chaos began. Gina had arrived earlier and made it to Camp 2, but the trail wasn't open. No ropes, no fixed lines, just raw snow and deadly uncertainty. She waited. Anna and the elite exped team arrived next and pushed hard, rushing to Camp 1. That's when climbers noticed something odd. Both Gina and Anna were already using supplemental oxygen. even at the lower camps. That's not typical at this stage. Most save it for the higher altitudes, but the competition had gotten so intense, every edge mattered. Oxygen meant speed. Speed meant the summit. Other climbers on the mountain started to feel the tension. A Pakistani mountaineer, Naila Kiani, noted that everyone seemed to be waiting on her team to break the trail. There was no collaboration, no shared effort. The race had stripped away the usual mountain etiquette. The environment was becoming hostile, not from nature, but from the climbers themselves. Anna's team veered off toward the summit first, but they didn't take the classic route. Instead, they chose a diagonal path, fast, direct, but questionable. Gina and Tenzing took a more traversed line, sweeping across a slope from left to right. That line was considered closer to the true summit. Suddenly, Anna's team stopped. Around 7,700 meters, they paused for nearly an hour. Confusion, fatigue, realization, no one knows for sure, but something wasn't right. Then they started climbing again, and that's when the first avalanche hit. It came like a ghost, a powdery roar tumbling down the slopes. Nims shouted from below, "Avalanche!" But there was no time to react. Anna and her Sherpa Migmar were caught in the direct line. Within minutes, climbers were digging. Radios were alive with panic. 20 minutes later, Migmar's body was found. Anna was gone, swallowed by snow and silence. That should have been the end of the competition. But up on a different line, Gina and Tenzing were still climbing. They may not have even known about the avalanche. Their radios were on a different frequency. Some say base camp tried to contact Gina to turn around. Others say she heard and ignored it. Whatever happened, Gina was now deep in summit fever, a condition every serious mountaineer fears. It clouds judgment, narrows vision. The summit becomes everything. She was just 80 meters away when the second avalanche hit. Details here are murky. Some reports suggest shifting snowfields caused the collapse. Others blame the warming sun and the rush of climbers that morning. But one thing is painfully clear: Gina and Tenzing didn't survive. Their bodies were found on the upper slopes, lifeless, just short of the summit they fought so hard to reach. And just like that, the deadliest competition on Earth claimed both contenders. Back at base camp, grief was immediate, but so was the debate. Some climbers questioned if things might have been different had both teams collaborated. If there hadn't been such a toxic rush for the record, maybe the avalanches would have happened anyway. But the way they unfolded, the speed, the isolation, the lack of shared safety, all of it pointed to a competition that spiraled out of control. This wasn't just a tragic accident. It was a reflection of what happens when ambition becomes obsession, when records matter more than teamwork, when two women, both strong, brave, and capable, are pushed into a race that no one truly won. Their legacy lives on, not just in death, but in what they represented: determination, courage, and also the hard questions mountaineering must face in a world of social media, personal branding, and high-stakes records. Call it tragedy, call it a cautionary tale, but above all, call it what it was: the deadliest competition on Earth. If this story moved you, make sure to subscribe and hit that bell icon. Real stories like these deserve to be remembered. And if you're a fan of extreme adventures and true untold journeys, there's more coming your way.